would agree as we talk Utah Jazz basketball on the Monty Show. Let me just roll some of this out because Danny Ainge said something to Craig Bolerjack that I thought was very interesting about being mediocre.
The reality is we've had 16 years of, it's better than mediocrity for sure at times in the last 16 years, but at the same time it really hasn't been championship caliber basketball. And 16 years without getting past the second round of the playoffs, right, I think is not what any of us want. And so the change is just, okay, here we are with veteran team, had been all in on this veteran team. I think Dennis Lindsey has done a fantastic job in this organization, as did Quinn Snyder. And but I just think we're starting over.
Starting over. Mm-hmm. When you hear him say those two words, starting over, how does that impact you? As a Jazz fan, I've got to believe that's frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's starting over. I actually disagree with those two words. I don't think you're starting over, and I don't think that it should be viewed as that. I think this is a continual push forward because, again, starting over to me, I just don't like the verbiage because, frankly, it's not like you had to redraft your whole team or something. What you've done here is you've made a decision, and frankly, I think it was a hard decision, and they deserve credit for it. But I think it was the decision that was necessary. I think Danny said it perfectly there. Hey, you've had 16 years of basketball that was good enough to go to the playoffs, but not good enough to win a championship. We told you, a year ago, we've been saying it for a long time, that Rudy Gobert, Donovan Mitchell team was not championship material, and we got a lot of hate for that, but it's funny now how it's coming back around, and I think that the Utah Jazz deserve credit for making a decision to get rid of those guys. At the same time, I don't think that the Utah Jazz have the luxury of being a 20-win team, and I don't think that by the deadline, the veterans are going to be here.
No, I would agree with that. And I think the other thing that Danny Ainge said, and this was in the press conference that they had where we got almost nothing, but this bite right here is critically important. Here's Danny Ainge talking about a group of players who didn't believe.
What I saw during the season was a group of players that really didn't believe in each other. Like the whole group, I think they liked each other even more than was reported. I think there was... but I'm not sure there was a belief that and so when we got to the playoffs, I thought, well, this is a team that's had some disappointing playoffs, and maybe they're just waiting for the playoffs. And so I gave them that benefit of the doubt. And, but it was clear the team, did not perform well in the playoffs.
Well, I mean, that is very clear. Very clear.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't perform well in the playoffs. But I wonder how much of that was a shot at Donovan Mitchell. And this is the problem, and this is kind of the conversation we continue to have about the Utah Jazz. Nobody asked that question. Nobody followed up on, hey, Donovan, like the comments about, moving on or starting over.
How does it reflect on Donovan Mitchell that you just said that the group of players didn't really believe that they could win a ball game together? That they didn't believe that they could really win a championship together. I mean, how does that? Was that why you traded Donovan Mitchell, or what was the actual reason for trading Donovan Mitchell? Because I think the Utah Jazz fan base deserves to have that question answered. Because I got news for you, it's not good enough just to say, well, the Knicks came calling, or Cleveland came calling, or any random team came calling, so that's why we decided to go ahead and green light the Cavs trade. I think Utah Jazz fans deserve that answer. And frankly, and again, I'm not saying this from the perspective of, hey, we're better than anyone, or these guys suck, or I'm not trying to have that conversation. All I'm saying is I think it's an easy follow-up that should have been asked, which simply would have been, hey, what does it say about Donovan Mitchell that this team didn't believe it could win a championship together?
I think that's a big question, and I think it's one of those things that I don't know that we'll ever know, because I don't know that anybody will ask that. I mean, you traded a top-tier player in the NBA who was 25 years old,
yes,
and had 3 more years of club control. Something happened there.
Yes.
And nobody followed up on that. Nobody asked that question. And I think one of the things that really stands out to me is that The Jazz control the media in this town, and it's interesting. I have guys at the Jazz that I talk to on a pretty regular basis, and they agree they control the media in this town.
Yeah.
And one of the things that is so often talked about is that the Jazz are not accountable to anyone, and they're not. And I think that that's part of the allure of owning this team for Ryan Smith is he can have a miss on a jersey rollout, and nobody's going to say anything. They can make a transformative trade, and nobody's going to ask why.
Multiple transformative trades.
I mean, the Rudy Gobert trade was as simple as dollars and cents. They had to move that.
You
contract.
had a built-in reason, but I still think even in that presser, right? There still would have been opportunity to say, "Hey, so you moved on from Rudy Gobert, what's the direction of this team?" Or there are still opportunities. Like, I agree with you. There's built-in reason to trade him. Absolutely. Like, that wasn't something controversial or even surprising, but it's still a foundational change to the organization. I mean, this is someone who was a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year. This is someone who the fans absolutely loved and adored, man. Like, it's a big deal.
But I think when you do that with both of these guys, it's a major problem.
Yeah.
It is a major problem. And now the question is, how do you replace a guy like Donovan Mitchell? The answer is I don't know. But when you listen to this bite, and I would ask you, I'm just going to play this one more time. This 16 years of mediocrity. Listen to what he says here.
The reality is we've had 16 years of, it's better than mediocrity for sure at times in the last 16 years, but at the same time, it really hasn't been championship caliber basketball. And 16 years without getting past the second round of the playoffs, I think is not what any of us want. And so the change is just, okay, here we are with veteran team, had been all in on this veteran team. I think Dennis Lindsey has done a fantastic job in this organization, as did Quinn Snyder. And but I just think we're starting over.
Yeah, and I think this whole concept around starting over is just, to me, I just don't agree with it. And so I think with the media, you have this situation where they won't ask the question. And I think that the Danny Ainge, and Ryan Smith, and frankly, the whole front office team understand that. They understand the concept of, hey, we're not going to get big-time backlash. We're not going to get questions about, hey, how are we operating, or what are we doing, or what choices are we making, or maybe, hey, are you going after VW in the draft now because you've torn it down? Are you doing certain things based on your behavior? And I think that it is frustrating, but at the same time, I also think that the Utah Jazz behavior is very predictable in some ways, where you have this whole concept of, hey, it's been about 2 weeks or whatever it's been since the Donovan Mitchell trade went down, and they're just now doing media availability.
See, Greg Hawkins makes a great point. It's, quote, it's better than mediocrity for sure at times. LOL, no, it's the definition of mediocrity. That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't have a problem with the game plan here. I really don't. I need to know why you traded Donovan Mitchell. I need to know. I know what I've been told.
What's the thought process?
I know what I've been told. I know what we've been told. I know what, sources are telling us. I want to hear Danny Ainge say it. I want to understand it, because when you're talking about chemistry issues in your locker room, that's a big freaking deal.
And I don't want the question to come from Craig Bolerjack, with all due respect.
No,
I don't want the questions to come from him, because it's no secret. And again, we were talking about this on Twitter over the last couple of days about how it's softball and it's a very safe environment, and there's just no honesty in it. That's what I think people are upset about. There's no real honest integrity in it. And I
totally
think
agree.
And as Jazz fans, I understand why you're frustrated. And everyone says to us, well, why don't you guys go? Why don't you guys ask the questions? Why don't you guys do that? Because we don't have time to be going to Jazz games constantly. We don't have that
well,
type
when you
of
get up at
opportunity.
4:30 in the morning, it makes that very difficult.
It makes it difficult.
And understandably, it's a whole different dynamic. Utah Jazz basketball talk on the Monty Show, presented by TryDayTrading.com, TryDayTrading.com/Monty. Hey, if you're trying to get out of your 9 to 5 and you are that person that's on the wheel constantly searching for the side hustle. And I know you've tried Amazon FBA, you've tried garage sailing, you've tried, collectors, you've tried all this stuff to make money on the side. You're touring your car, you're doing all this stuff. Stop. Get off the wheel. Make real money. Get out of your 9-to-5 at trydaytrading.com/Monty. If you have any interest in knowing, if you're somebody that's been passionate about the stock market like me, which is how I found trydaytrading.com. I'm a big stock market guy. I have dabbled in day trading. I know I don't know what I'm doing. I'm one of those guys who believe you got to know what you don't know, right? Well, I do, and that's why I trust the guys at trydaytrading.com, and what they're going to do is they are going to allow you to trade their money, and if you make money with their money, you guys split the profit. If you don't, that's a loss for Tri-Day Trading. That's why I'm telling you, it is easy to go to trydaytrading.com/Monty and register for their free webinar. It is a free, no cost, no obligation webinar that's going to tell you exactly how the program at Tri-Day Trading works. And the best part about the program at Tri-Day Trading is you get high-level coaching. It's not like, hey, we're going to, put you through our program and then we're never going to talk to you again. There's support all the way down the line. And as I mentioned before, you go through their program, you get this coaching, and then you trade their money. Your first trades are not with your own money. You're not risking your own wealth. You are trading Tri-Day Trading's money. And if you make money, you split the profit. It is as good as it gets. That's what side hustling should be about. Build generational wealth for your family. Do it at trydaytrading.com/Monty. Register for the free webinar. Trust me when I say you will not regret it. trydaytrading.com/Monty as we talk Utah Jazz basketball. There is a little significant breaking news, though, this morning. Mountain West Commissioner Craig Thompson is stepping down after nearly 25 years on the job at the Mountain West Conference. And I know that Craig has taken quite a beating. He's not a guy that is popular in Mountain West country. I mean, the lack of a quality TV network, the lack of really a quality TV deal, growing revenue. I mean, there's been a lot of complaints. But, Jake, I think one thing is for sure with Craig Thompson at the helm of the Mountain West, I mean, they certainly have grown a footprint in that conference.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Mountain West is obviously it's a fine conference. For me, like the Mountain West is it is what it is. Like the guy has been there a long time. Obviously, he hasn't executed as you were just saying. And I think the Mountain West in every football conference deserves better. I mean, frankly, how different is the Mountain West from the Pac when you really look at it? Obviously, the talent's better in the Pac. That's no secret. But I'm just talking about from a TV network, X's and O's, making money perspective. The Mountain West really just isn't that much different from what the Pac deals with. No TV, no great TV deal, or really what would be called a distribution deal. Overall, you're just not in a great place as a conference. So, yeah, while this is breaking news, I very much feel that this has been a long time coming, and we'll see who they bring on. I don't really think that, maybe I'm being naive, but I don't know that this affects college football expansion a ton. It just is what it is. I don't do you feel like this is some huge deal or some groundbreaking move?
I think it's history in the making. I think Craig Thompson is one of the longest serving commissioners in college football. I think for better or for worse, he has really shaped the past and really has shaped the direction of the Mountain West going forward. And I think it's one of those things where you will not fully understand his impact on this conference until a replacement is in place. And if this conference takes off, and I disagree, I think this is a huge moment in time for the Mountain West as far as expansion goes, because I think the Mountain West and its viability as a conference is at risk. Because when you look at the member institutions, teams like Utah State, teams, there's a lot of attractive brands in that conference that I don't think are just going to sit around and wait. I mean, the San Diego States of the world are in high demand. And I think when you look at what the Mountain West Conference is and what it's going to be, I think those are two very different things.
Yeah. There's a lot at play here. I don't know. Maybe I'm downplaying it. I mean, we need to see who replaces them. We need to see the impacts of that. We need to see how that all sort of plays out. But again, I don't think that your run-of-the-mill college football fan is going to sit here and be like, wow, he stepped down. Like, holy cow, what's going on in college football? I think they know his name. They know he was a commissioner for a really long time. They know some of the brands in that conference. But I don't know, man. This for some reason to me, this just feels like it was a long time coming, and frankly, I hope it's good for the conference. I don't really know how it could be bad, to be honest with you. I think it's always good when you get a fresh voice in the room, without a doubt.
I think when you look at you look at just the Mountain Division, teams like Boise, Air Force, Utah State, Colorado State. You look at Nevada, Fresno State, San Diego State, UNLV. I mean, all of those teams have been mentioned in potential Big 12, Pac-12 conversations.
They definitely have brands, absolutely. I think that, yeah, sure, if a new commissioner comes in and paves the way for, the Mountain West to be dissolved, if you will, or like paves the way for these teams to be added into a bigger picture situation, that's great, but we have to see that play out. If you're, I mean, I have to think they have names, right? Obviously, they have people they're considering. So that's why I say, I think, yeah, while this is a big deal, there's a lot of talking points. It's still the Mountain West. Like, it's not like this is the SEC or something. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's two, they run parallel together. It is the Mountain West. It is a lower conference, but also Craig Thompson has been at the helm for God knows how long, before I was even probably born at this point.
But I mean, he's the only commissioner the conference has ever known. I mean, he's been in control of that conference since 99. I mean, this is a guy
99, dude. It's 2022.
I don't.
Who's more at fault for their current situation, Craig Thompson or the conference itself, and the people who decide when Craig Thompson needs to go ahead and move it on out?
Yeah, I listen. I don't disagree with you. I just think that this is a really critical moment in time for the Mountain. I think. And you look at how much impact the Mountain West has had on football in the state of Utah. I mean, this is not an insignificant situation.
For sure.
It really is not. And I don't know. My personal belief is that the Mountain goes away eventually. I just think you're going to lose too much. And I think that the Mountain has played a significant role in the history of college football. And I am not a Craig Thompson fan. He's a guy that doesn't like to answer questions. He's a guy that, again, believes in operating without accountability. I think he's done a horrendous job in TV rights and things like streaming and things like digital. I just don't think he's ahead of the curve.
Mm-hmm.
He's 66 years old. I guess I wouldn't expect him to be. But my point is, he's a guy that's had a major hand in the transformation of football in this town. And I think now that he's leaving, I think that's a big deal.
Yeah.
I think it's something that,
I think for Utah, for the state of Utah, right? Like football in the state of Utah, it's obviously a big deal. I guess this kind of brings me back to this conversation we were having the other day about generations and how this sort of impacts, college football fans based on how long you've been a college football fan. I mean, if you've been following BYU and Utah and even Utah State, obviously, if you've been following any of those teams for any amount of time, then you're probably all over this story. I think for the younger generation, the generation that is, teenage years old right now, I don't know that this is a big story. And that's really fascinating to me when we talk about distribution deals and how college football works. Because,
that's right.
Because I think now, to your point, the conference could be dissolved. You could easily see a path to that. At the same time, I could easily see a selling point of, hey, new commissioner, distribution deal, not a lot has to change. We can start making more money now. So that's why I say this is right up that same path of the Pac-12 and, Larry Scott getting moved out and George Kloffkoff coming in and, to me, fumbling the whole situation. So that's why I say the difference is that you're not a P5 conference, right? That's different. You're in a situation where you're a little bit lower of a tier and you can't afford to make these same mistakes.
Yep, breaking news this morning right here on the show as Mountain West Commissioner Craig Thompson is stepping down after 24 years at the helm of the Mountain West Conference. There will be a new commissioner in place. It's going to be interesting to see where they go and who exactly takes that job. But without question, it is a transformative day in the history of college football.
Might this have been the most transformative year in college football? And when I say year, I mean calendar year. When you look at this time last year, where the game was at, and just all the stuff we've talked about.
Well, I mean, you have expansion of conferences, contraction of conferences.
Yes.
I don't think there's any doubt the expansion of the college football playoff is one of the biggest stories in the history of college football.
Yes.
I mean, It certainly could be one of, if not the most transformative year in the history of college football. I don't disagree with that. I mean, there's been a lot of history made, obviously.
Yeah.
From the BCS era to the playoff era. I mean, there's been a lot of changes with conference realignment and expansion and all that. But I don't know that we've seen this kind of groundbreaking change in college football for some time. All right, let's get back to the Utah Jazz. I know this is a crazy story, and we've had kind of an interesting period of time here, but the Jazz had this press conference this week and this Craig Bolerjack interview. I think one of the biggest stories is that there is no accountability for this organization. And I mean, the vibes, and I'm told that they are still very much involved in trade talks with Bojan Bogdanovic, Jordan Clarkson, and Mike Conley, and I would not be surprised to see a deal happen. I know the Lakers very much want Bojan Bogdanovic, but they're not willing to give up 2 picks for Bojan Bagsnachevich. So Bagsnachevich, we'll see what happens. But the lack of accountability on the Utah Jazz, I think, is a problem because I think, and I don't know, let's get this going in the comments. I think we as observers of the Jazz and you as Jazz fans, we deserve an answer on what happened with Donovan Mitchell. And he's got his press conference with the Cavs today. It'll be interesting to see what happens. We deserve answers on why Donovan Mitchell was traded. And this thing about belief, and I understand that this thing about belief is a big deal, and whether they believed in themselves or not. But we're sitting here talking about a situation where you traded a 25-year-old NBA superstar who you had club control for years to come.
Yes.
And you have not been asked why you did that. And you have not been asked to specifically explain what it was. Because what this statement, and I'm going to play this bite again because I think it's important. What this statement right here does is go directly to the heart of the leadership of this team. And when you're talking about a group of guys who didn't believe, is that the player's fault or is that the coach's fault? Is this why Quinn Snyder's not the head coach? Is this why Donovan Mitchell's not on the roster anymore? Was Donovan Mitchell part of the reason that you feel like this team didn't win a championship? That's a question that's got to be asked. Is Donovan Mitchell the reason that this team was a disappointment? That's a question that's got to be asked, because when you say something like this, there needs to be follow-up questions.
What I saw during the season was a group of players that really didn't believe in each other. Like the whole group, I think they liked each other even more than was reported. I think there was, but I'm not sure there was a belief that they, and so when we got to the playoffs, I thought, well, this is a team that's had some disappointing playoffs, and maybe they're just waiting for the playoffs. And so I gave them that benefit of the doubt, and but it was clear the team, did not perform well in the playoffs.
Right, and I don't disagree with that. I want to make sure. I don't disagree with what Danny said there. But you don't just trade a 25-year-old superstar.
Yeah, especially when you're in Utah, with all due respect. I mean, this is not the Lakers or the Knicks or the Celtics or a major market. And I know we have this discussion all the time, and I know, hey, if you want to feel and be a big market in Salt Lake, you got to start acting like it. But I don't feel like the Utah Jazz are ask questions that even enable them to act like it sometimes. I mean, it just, to me, like in the past, there have been times at press conferences where I felt like, hey, an elite reporter may ask that question. Someone who has zero fear or someone who just has the balls to ask the question. This was not that. This was an easy opportunity just to say, hey, so you just said that, the team disappointed and these guys didn't believe in each other. Work in a Donovan Mitchell question.
Yeah.
It's just that easy. And I feel like, Danny Ainge has been around the block. You're talking about a guy who came from Boston, So for him, this is a cakewalk. This is like just kind of, we're answering some questions. We know we're not going to get asked anything tough. And it just is that easy. And by the way, small detail, anyone notice that Justin Zanik is wearing the new branding? That is low-key wearing the new hoodie with the new branding.
But much like Harris LaChance, he was wearing a sweatshirt, which I was jealous of. But he was wearing the new branding. Did anybody notice the New Jersey Nets uniform that came out that absolutely tramples the Jazz new uniform?
And it's Brooklyn, please.
Excuse me, Brooklyn Nets?
Thank you.
I'm so old. Anyway, the point is, I just think that this is a very critical moment in time, and it is shocking to me Shocking to me.
Yeah.
That there's not a follow-up question asked when you say that this team didn't believe in each other.
That's a strong thing to say,
Yeah,
man.
to not ask a follow-up question, to say that these guys liked each other more than was reported.
And to talk about that you came in and shared that thought with the current team that was here, the current, like Justin Zanik and Ryan Smith, that you had shared that sentiment with them and that they agreed with you the first time you shared it. That's a strong thing to say. That says that everyone was in agreement that this team just didn't have the goods.
It's amazing to me that there was Anyway, Ruff's official says North Dakota State, Montana State, Weber State are fun to watch if you're really a college football fan. Mm-hmm. Okay. Brett Burnett says offers are on the table and the Lakers going to deal and the Jazz will get their ask. We'll see. We will see. Ken Williams, good morning, Ken. Good to see you, man. Says Danny is smart, but no way I'm trading with the Lakers. I just don't think you can do that kind of business anymore.
Yeah.
You can't say, well, I'm not going to make the Lakers, quote unquote, better. Who cares if they get better? Your point is you can have Bojan Bogdanovic and Jordan Clarkson, give me 2 first-round picks and some talent, and we have a deal.
Yeah.
Because that makes the Utah Jazz better. Does that mean the Lakers go and win a championship? It probably doesn't. Mm-hmm. But who cares? Because you're not winning a championship this year.
Yeah.
If this was in 2 years and you were making a deal like this, I would agree with you. You're not going to help a rival keep you from winning a championship. But the Jazz are not even in championship conversation at this point. You need as much draft capital because the other thing that Danny Ainge said is we're not building this team through the draft. I'm too old for that.
Yeah.
He is going to go out and make trades for talent.
Yes.
And that's why he's lined up draft picks. That's why everybody was like, oh, full tank, VW, here we go.
Not happening,
bro.
bro.
I mean, you can head to Southtown Volkswagen, but the Jazz are going to be on the trading block. They're going to be out. Yeah, they're going to be out making deals.
Yeah.
And they're not, in my opinion, and Justin Zanik talks specifically about this as well, they're not necessarily going to draft with all those picks. My guess is they're not going to draft with most of those picks because they now have real leverage in trades for superstars.
Yes.
Much as, Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell were traded. And this is what's so stunning about the Donovan Mitchell trade. He's 25 years old. So what are you going to have to go out and get now? Mm-hmm. You're going to have to go out and get somebody who's probably 25 years old and a superstar in this league. So are you telling me you didn't believe that Donovan Mitchell was a superstar?
Yes, I think that's what they're saying. But the problem is the question was never asked. And that's why I say when you come out, because again, the wording is very straightforward. When you come out and say that the team didn't believe in each other and that they were a disappointment in the postseason, that's an indictment on Donovan Mitchell on some level. That's an indictment on Mike Conley and Bojan Bogdanovic. And so to me, I definitely want some clarity on that. Danny, do you mean to say that Donovan wasn't ready to carry this team or that whatever you want to ask, but I think it just has to be done, man. And it just is frustrating not to get those questions.
All right, let's run through some of your comments here. Appreciate everybody being here. Greg Hawkins says, Utah Jazz trades Donovan Rudy. Utah Jazz media, quote, so what's your favorite ice cream? Exactly right. Isaac Aguiar says, I want answers.
Yeah.
Ruff's official says Don isn't a superstar. And that's debatable. I think if Donnie comes out and does what I think he's going to do, I think he's going to score 30 points a game. I do. I think there's just so much tape on him, and there's so much new tape on him where we're seeing moves that he did not employ over the last 2 years. He's going to have a monster season.
I think that sentiment is well taken in terms of that press conference. It's a totally appropriate question to ask Danny Ainge. Hey, did you believe or do you currently believe that Donovan Mitchell is a superstar in this league? Do you believe that he's a guy that can lead your team to the NBA Finals?
Apparently not.
Right? Put him in a position to answer the question.
Because when you ask him those questions and he says, yeah, he could have led us to a finals, well, then why did you trade him? What? No, I didn't think he could. Okay, well, what was it about him? Was it a leadership issue? What leadership qualities were missing? What skilled qualities on the floor were missing that you felt like Donovan didn't have and needed? And
it doesn't need to be an attack. That's the thing. I think what happens a lot here in Salt Lake and in the Salt Lake media is we talk about this, then it gets going on Twitter and people misconstrue what we say. People think that we're trying to say that you got to attack these guys.
No.
I'm not saying to attack these guys. What I'm saying is just ask the pertinent question because I think it's 100% appropriate. You're not coming out of left field here.
But that's the issue.
Yeah.
People in this town think when you ask a direct question, hey, what was it about Donovan Mitchell that made it so you had to trade him? That's not an attacking question. That is a softball question in just about every other NBA market.
Why was 4 first-round picks the price? What went into that being the price?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's why I say I think there could have been a lot of clarity that came out of that presser for sure. But we just
Never got it. Brent Burnett says Spida and the Jazz mutually worked it out. The Jazz traded for a haul. Cavs a very nice place if I'm Spider. I don't disagree with that.
Don's got a big opportunity in front of him. There's no doubt.
Greg Hawkins, I don't anticipate that our team is going to win as many games as we'd won, Ainge admitted, but I believe it's going to be more entertaining and more exciting basketball. That's from KSL Sports. Yeah, could be. Absolutely could be. Brett Burnett says, love Spida too, but Spida and the Jazz privately and respectfully worked it out. Yeah, I don't know about that.
See, why, and I'm not trying to hate on that comment specifically, but I've heard this a lot over the last couple of weeks. Why are we assuming that they privately worked it out? Who the hell knows? What happens if in his media availability today, Donovan Mitchell comes out and says that he was unhappy for the last 2 years and it was a miserable time, or like he sends that type of message? He's probably not going to say it was a miserable time. But my point just is if he sends that message, I wasn't happy, it was not fun, we had major issues in that locker room.
Yeah.
What then is a Jazz? Are you then going to say that the Utah Jazz and Donovan worked it out? Because I don't think the way this was handled, they worked it out. That's not the message that I get out of the whole thing.
I just think Danny couldn't pass that deal up. I mean, we've been over this ground before.
And that's fine if he wants to say that. If he wants to say in a media availability, hey, it was simple as I couldn't pass up that deal. We as a team, as a front office team, as a talent evaluating team, that the reason it was 4 first-round picks is X, Y, and Z. We got our price and we pulled the trigger. I can respect that answer.
And I think a lot of this is that you have a draft coming up in 2023 that is arguably the deepest draft in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that you're going to draft players in that draft. What it means is other teams will be more hungry, will have a larger appetite to get into the draft, and they will be more willing to let their players go.
Totally.
So, I mean, there is a lot of relationships the Jazz have built through these trade conversations over the last 6 months.
Yeah.
And those, you're going to see fruits of that labor. I mean, this is not an organization that's historically made deals with the Lakers, that have made deals with the Nets, that have made deals with the Cavs. Mm-hmm. Like you're seeing the Jazz are out in the marketplace making significant transformative deals, and they're not done doing that.
Yeah, and historically they haven't controlled the trade market, which they've absolutely done this year.
Yeah, so I think that's an interesting way of looking at it. Mark Rasmussen, good morning, says, very ashamed that they traded Mitchell. Shame on you, Ainge. I don't know. I think they got a haul in return. Rance, good morning to you. They were becoming the Blazers one-man show, and it wasn't going to work. I don't disagree with that.
But but what I want is I want Danny Ainge to say that. I want Danny to come out and say, hey, this is the reason we felt compelled to do the deal. Because Rudy, like you said earlier, Rudy had a built-in reason. It was cap space, money, business. Okay, cool.
Yeah, no doubt.
We get it. Donovan is a whole different beast. Donovan is like, hey, this is a franchise-level player. He's 25, club control, no real reason to trade him other than, hey, we want to go a different direction or whatever reason you want to say. And that, to me, I hope that someone from the Cleveland media, which I have high hopes for, Cleveland's media is pretty good, I hope that someone asks Donovan Mitchell, hey, were you unhappy there? Or what was the feel there? Or
did you demand a trade?
Out? Did you demand a trade? Excellent question. Like anything like that. I hope we get that level of clarity today.
Yeah, I think we need that level of clarity today. Mark Rasmussen says they're going to suck maybe forever.
Well, I don't know about all that.
Come on now. Hullabilly, good morning, says the Rockets throwback jersey this year are gorgeous. Yes, they are. Ken Williams says he traded him because he got a great deal and helped the future of this time and got Sexton in the deal. I love the moves. I don't think anybody's ever going to argue with the equity that you got in return for Gobert and Don.
No.
Nobody's ever going to argue with that. It's unbelievable. I mean, it's unthinkable.
Yeah.
What Danny Ainge has done here. The why is still important, in my opinion. I just
It matters.
it makes very little sense that you traded a 25-year-old. The only answer could be you don't value him as a superstar. There's something that you know about him. Interesting. Boy, there's a lot of college football news today, folks. Pete Thamel, ESPN College Football Insider. The SEC has directed Georgia and Tennessee to not play their home-at-home non-conference series against Oklahoma. The Bulldogs had OU scheduled in 23 and 31. The Vols 2020 game in Norman was canceled amid COVID and was expected to be made up down the line. That left the return games in each of the series to take place after OU and Texas are scheduled to join the league. So we're already seeing that that this SEC Big Ten thing is a problem. I'm telling you, we have not seen the repercussions of that. Sorry to be a squirrel chasing a nut.
Yeah.
I don't mean to go, but that's a really compelling problem. Is that schedule?
Yeah.
Anyway, my point is, I think the why you traded Donovan is really important. Let's see. Brent Burnett says Jazz players did like each other. Still hard to deal with losing. Just no time for losers. I disagree with Danny on that. I was told repeatedly that Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell had no relationship. Did not speak. Were not friendly. Did not hang out with each other away from the game. Very clearly, I don't think there is any doubt in anybody's mind that Donovan Mitchell and Royce O'Neal were best friends. There is no question about that. Mm-hmm. But I'm also told that trade had no impact on Donovan Mitchell being traded. That Royce O'Neal just was not going to fit into what they wanted to do, and that Will Hardy has a different, plan and style that he wants to play.
Well, and that much was made very clear by Danny multiple times about how this is going to be more exciting basketball, and Jazz
they
want
to play up tempo.
Yeah,
they want to play up tempo
clearly, and I think that. Look, I get it, man. The goal here is to suck, but do it in an entertaining fashion. That's the goal here, and to buy yourself some time to go out and make more deals and turn the ROI into actual players on the floor winning you ball games and winning championships. I get that that's the process, but again, I just have this issue with this idea that there was that you weren't. I guess the best way to say is Danny wasn't given the opportunity directly to say why they traded Donovan Mitchell.
Yes,
and I think
that's right.
Donovan, I have, I would say, an 85 to 90% confidence level that the Cleveland media is going to ask Donovan Mitchell about, did you guys work it out? Are you happy you were traded? They're going to get into that stuff with him, and I'll be curious to see what he has to say, because I guarantee you he's prepared for that.
Yep. Zayman says, what is your Jazz source saying on trading Don, and do you trust the answer they're giving? Well, I mean, they've been very straightforward and consistent from the beginning. Danny Ainge would be derelict in his duty. He'd be irresponsible if he didn't make that trade.
Yeah.
And I think that's been their stance from the beginning. Because, I mean, I think our track record kind of speaks for itself. I mean, our sourcing's been pretty good.
Yeah.
I think we've hit on 5-6 straight NBA stories, and I get it. I know why they traded Rudy Gobert. I understand. Rudy is not the easiest teammate in the world. I don't think anybody disagrees with that or argues that. He was not popular in his locker room. He did not take accountability. Well, you get all that. We had never heard any of that about Donovan. The biggest complaint about Donovan is that he was very quiet. Mm-hmm. Donovan is not an outward vocal leader. And I think one of the biggest questions that I'd like to know about Donovan Mitchell is, what is his leadership capability? Is he able to take a room of guys and bring them together? Is he able to be that true superstar on the floor and off the floor? Because if he's not, that's a great reason to trade him. Mm-hmm. Because Don doesn't have the on-court personality to be a number two. He's an alpha male. Mm-hmm. There's no doubt about that. And I think Don's very well aware of who he is and what he is. And I think he knows he doesn't have any desire to be a vocal leader off the floor. And I think a lot of franchises need a guy that'll be a vocal leader off the floor. And I think Cleveland or New York New York's got a guy like Jalen Brunson, who's a very good leader, who is a guy that's a unifier. I just don't know that the Jazz believed in Donovan Mitchell to that level. I think there were always the questions I've always heard about Donovan Mitchell are always leadership. He's never been a headache in the locker room. He's not a guy that tweets about other players like Rudy did. He's not a guy that's calling other players out and then refusing to take discipline like Rudy did. Like it was just, he didn't say much at all. Mm-hmm. And I think that was a problem for the Jazz. And I think, frankly, Zayman, thank you for the $5 tip, by the way. I think that's why they traded him, honestly. Ken Williams says they still win 35 to 40 games. Maybe. We'll see what they do at the trade deadline, by the way. Brett Burnett says, I have a source on the Don trade. It's me and Spida was happy to go to the Cavs. I'm sure he was. Would he tell you if he was unhappy to go to the Cavs? Probably not. I don't know. Brett Burnett says, you can use me as your source anytime. Thank you. I appreciate that.
For real.
Isaac Aguiar says, do you think they can make the playoffs next season? Ask me after the trade deadline. Because I don't think they're close. I don't think they bring this roster back to camp. I don't. I mean, it makes very little sense to trade Donovan and Rudy and bring in all this talent and keep Bojan Bogdanovic on the roster. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me, especially knowing he's in demand. Yeah. And he's a guy who's had major injury issues the last couple of years.
Yeah, you need to trade him now because if you don't, you're going to get behind that value curve, and you're not going to be in a good spot trying to trade him next year.
I mean, I can see them bringing Jordan Clarkson back because, he's a very popular player.
And his style fits into what they're
stylistically,
trying to do.
he fits right into what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
So I could see them bringing him back. It just doesn't make sense to have Bogey and Conley on the roster. That makes no sense to me. And by the way, what are you doing with Rudy Gay, who was a real problem in the locker room, who complained about playing time and minutes? Mm-hmm. What are you doing with Rudy Gay? And what sense does it make to have him on the roster?
It doesn't.
It doesn't make any sense at all. So there's just all these
questions. They have
questions.
17 guaranteed contracts right now. They have to make moves.
What is it? What sense does it make to have Malik Beasley on this roster if the Lakers are interested? That's a guy who's a very good three-point shooter. What sense does it make to have him here? There's a lot of odd fits.
Yeah.
Are you going to trade these guys at the deadline? I would tell you Bogdanovic and Conley are very risky to do that with. You can hang on to Beasley and trade him at the deadline. I could see them doing that. But I just don't see a lot of value in there was a lot of people saying that they were going to trade Jared Vanderbilt. I have not heard that. I have not heard that one time. He was a guy that they were very happy to get in the Minnesota deal. You would need, that's another deal where if you're trading Bogey, Conley, and Vanderbilt, that's 3 unprotected first-round picks.
Yeah.
I can't see them doing that for 2 with the Lakers. That doesn't make sense. And this is why I said last week a deal was not close. There were other people reporting that a deal was close. A deal with the Lakers has never been close.
Yeah.
Not in this incarnation. I think the Lakers have been trying to be a third team with the Lakers and the Knicks for as long as that deal had been being put together. Because the Lakers would like to move Russell Westbrook. The Jazz, I don't think, would mind having that cap space. So, I can see where that would work. But there's not been as far as I understand, there hasn't been a deal that's been close.
Yeah.
With the Lakers in this Bojan, Conley, Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's never been in that deal. It just is not something that I'm not going to say it's not something the Jazz would do. The Jazz know that Vanderbilt has tremendous upside.
Yeah, and again, he fits into what they're trying to do, which is play up-tempo, up and down basketball. And I think that to me was made very clear yesterday, if I'm being honest. It was made very clear yesterday that, we're not going to win as many games, but it's going to be entertaining basketball. So we're not going to be painful. We're not going to be terrible. But what that has written all over it is Houston Rockets. That's what it has written all over it. The problem is you don't have a bunch of guys who are 6'10", and physically gifted scorers. So when we talk about enjoyable or not, when you're down 20 headed into the fourth, that's probably not going to be real enjoyable to your fan base. And by the way, you still don't have a distribution deal to at least show the games. So that's why I say the Jazz are very in tune with where they are and how their fans are going to experience this product this year. So I don't know, man. I don't think they're done yet. I can't see keeping these veterans.
Yeah, football at 50 in 2 minutes right here on the Monty Show. But wrapping up Jazz talk, and in 10 minutes, I do want to get to this Robert Sarver situation because I don't know how many people. I don't know. Is this a story of consequence? I think this is a huge story of consequence. This situation with Robert Sarver, the owner of the Suns, being suspended a year and fined $10 million. I think that's a big deal. That is a big, big deal.